Appreciate everyone for joining us for Coach Franklin's weekly press conference. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach, and then we'll open up for questions.
As always, appreciate you guys coming out and covering Penn State football. Quick Oregon recap. Turnover battle, obviously we lost the turnover at the end of the game. Explosive play battle, we actually won. Did not meet our goal on offense, but did win. We were at 10%, they were at 7%. Third and fourth down battle, we won. I was actually surprised when I saw that. Again, I think it depends on how you look at it. Our third down percentage was better, our fourth down percentage was better, but they went for it a bunch more based on sequencing and where they were at on the field. Sack battle, I think that was an important factor in the game. We weren't able to get to this quarterback. And on that note, I thought he played extremely well during the game, and then watching the tape, I think he played really well. But they were able to get 2 sacks. We weren't able to get any. That also factors in to me, which was the storyline of the game, was first down. They were able to stay ahead of the sticks all night. Sequencing, which also played into the third and fourth down discussion we had a little bit, and we weren't able to get ahead of the sticks, so it created a ton of third and long situations which are not advantageous for your O-line, your quarterback, or your play caller. Drive start battle, we won that. Penalties, we won that. I think that could have been even more significant in the game. We didn't get any sacks. I also thought there was a significant amount of calls that weren't made. That could have impacted that as well, but we did win that battle. Middle 8, we lost by 3. I thought our guys, when you went back and watched the tape, I thought we played really, really hard for not only 4 quarters, but into overtime. There came a point, just like I said after the game to you guys, that back to the first down discussion, the time of possession, I think our defense ran out of gas. I think for 3 quarters they were on the field too much, and that's a combination of them not being able to get off the field and our offense not being able to stay on the field. Combination of those 2 things. But I saw a ton of grit from our guys. I saw a ton of resiliency from our guys. I think we continue to play consistent on special teams. I think that's been a positive for us. Opportunities for growth, I already talked about first down, I already talked about protecting the football. Not only protecting the football, but creating turnovers. We had an opportunity early in the game for a turnover we didn't make. We had a turnover late in the game that got overturned. To me, from what I saw, because I got this question afterwards, I didn't see enough to overturn the call on the field. But again, I wanted to just follow back up because you guys did ask me that question after the game. And then the other thing, just making sure that we stay as positive as possible. Don't allow 1 loss to turn into 2. I think I got some questions about, anger and frustration. Totally get it. But if you're not careful, that negativity can linger. And we've had this issue in the past where 1 loss turns into 2 because there's just so much negativity that it's hard to get the team over it and moved on. So I think that's going to be really, really important. I think it's also very telling, and this was a message with our team, that the team in our conference last year that won the national championship had 2 conference losses during the season. I think 2 of the top 5 teams in the country lost this week. So I think college football is different than maybe how it's been in the past. And you got to do everything you possibly can to put yourself in the best position to get into the playoffs, and then make a run. So, our focus is on playing UCLA this weekend. I'll get into that now. Obviously, spent a ton of time last year on how to travel. And I thought we handled it well last year. We're going to need to do that again. We learned some things from last year. You look at, again, I brought this up before, but you look at people's records, either West Coast teams flying all the way east or East Coast teams flying all the way west, whether that's in the NFL or college. Their record's not very good. It's magnified for East Coast teams traveling west. So making sure we're doing a good job of handling that. Coach Skipper and UCLA, I don't know Coach Skipper very well. I've met him a few times, but don't know him very well. He's an interim coach right now. He was the interim head coach at Fresno the year before, so he has some experience. I was impressed watching these guys on tape at Northwestern. Thought they played hard. It came down right there to the last drive. In that game, Northwestern was able to get the W, but I thought they played really hard. Offensively, Tino Sinceri, who's a Pittsburgh guy, dad, longtime coach, came from Indiana as the offensive coordinator. They're an 11 personnel and 12 personnel team. I know there's been a ton of conversations in the off-season and preseason about their quarterback, Nico, but he's impressive on film. Makes a ton of impressive throws, is mobile. Although he's a slight guy, he's tall and thin, he's a physical runner. I've been impressed with him. Running back number 6, Anthony Woods, who's a Utah transfer, and then wide receiver number 3, Quasi Gilmer, has been a productive player for them. Kind of an unusual story on defense. Their defensive coordinator, Kevin Coyle, was at Syracuse 2 weeks ago and came in and took over the defense. So for us, watching the beginning of the season compared to now, there's value in that, but also what they did this past week. Probably the biggest change we saw is a lot more man coverage. If you listen to reports and read reports, came in and changed the defense. How much that is accurate, I'm not sure. Maybe they just focused on a different style. I think they did limit the playbook to get the guys playing faster and more aggressive. I think that happened. And I think by playing man coverage, they could simplify things by saying, I got that guy, I got that guy. But an unusual situation. I think a little bit that is Coach Coyle and the head coach have experience. I think they were at Fresno together, so I think that's where that comes from. So talking about their defense, I'd say they're a multiple scheme, but again, hard to speak on that in great detail. But we did see a spike in man coverage this past week. Got a ton of transfers on the defensive side of the ball. Linebacker number 32, Isaiah Chisholm, is from Oregon State. Safety number 21, Cole Martin, who's from Arizona State. Been impressed with those guys. D-tackle number 99, Keanu Williams, who's a guy that's been there. Big guy, 6'5", 320-pound D-tackle. Safety number 4, Key Lawrence, who's a Ole Miss transfer. And then another massive D-tackle, number 58, Gary Smith, who's 340 pounds. Been impressed with him on tape. Special teams, they do not list a special teams coordinator, on their website, but from what we understand, we think Bailey McElwain is the guy that's handling special teams for them. His first year handling special teams there at UCLA in 7 years in his career. We've been impressed with their kicker, Mateen Bugani, their kick returner, number 22, Anthony Freitas, and then their punt returner, number 7, Mickey Matthews, who is a Cal transfer. So really important that we get out there. We'll practice Thursday morning here and then fly out to California. Really important that we do a great job, that we get a win and get back on a roll. So appreciate you guys being here and open up the questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcello, followed by Frank Bodani.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good. Hey, Rich.
James, you said last month that you thought this offensive line could be one of the best or the best in school history. And I was just wondering, are they playing that like that right now? And how much responsibility do they bear for the struggles Saturday night being behind the sticks?
Yeah, I think our O-line, like a lot of things on offense right now, we're inconsistent. There's times where we look really good, and there's times where we don't. And that's pretty much across the board on offense right now, inconsistent. I think you saw how we were structured last year in terms of how we'd like to manage the offense and be able to run the ball, be able to stay ahead of the sticks, be able to create manageable third down situations, also use that with the ability to go play action pass and take shots down the field. And until you're able to establish the running game, which we were able to do late in the game, which opened everything up from that point on, we have not been able to do consistency. So I think the O-line is like a lot of things on offense. We just have not been as consistent, and that's really been all year so far.
Let's go to Frank Bodani, followed by Mark Wogenrich.
Hey, good afternoon, James.
Hey, Frank.
Hello. Hi. Drew Aller, he's a better quarterback now than the end of last year. Could you talk about how you see that in your eyes? How has he shown that through 4 games to you? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think when you talk about 4 games, again, back to the last question I got, we've just been inconsistent. We've been inconsistent in the passing game. We've been inconsistent in the running game. Again, this past week is not the ideal situation for an O-line or for a quarterback when you continue to get in obvious 3rd and long situations. Obviously, when we talk about the inconsistency, it's all across the board on offense. I think you see flashes of brilliance, and then you see inconsistency. So, I think we continue to do a good job in terms of Drew when it comes to decision making. Obviously that last throw, that's a challenging route that people have a difficult time covering, but that was covered. And we should have moved on or thrown the ball away to give us a chance to play another down and have a chance to win the game. But I've seen his growth in practice, but obviously all these things need to translate to the game. And again, I think it's a consistency issue as much as anything.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich, followed by Mike Gross.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Mark. How are you, man?
Good, thanks. You kind of referenced Ohio State's run last year and discussing the loss, coming back to win. Have you and Jim Knowles touched on that at all after Saturday night, specifically to having like a season still in front of you after an early loss?
Yeah. I spoke with Jim about it. Jim talked to the defense about it. I actually was hoping he'd speak to the whole team about it, but he ended up just talking to the defense about it. We'll probably follow back up on that as well. He talked to the staff about it as well. So yeah, I think that's been valuable. Obviously, he's got good perspective on these things, and a ton of information from that situation. So yeah, definitely talked to Jim about it on Sunday, and we obviously had conversations before Sunday about it as well. And I think that's an important message for our entire team to hear.
Let's go to Mike Gross, followed by Neil Riddell.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Thanks. This is kind of related to Wogie's question. You talked about not wanting one loss to turn into 2, and that maybe has happened in the past. Is it easier to coach the kids in that regard, or do they even need to be coached in that regard, given that one loss is not as devastating in the current format with the 12-team playoff?
Well, again, I think you have to make sure that you're clear on that, because I don't think a lot of people, including our players, recognize that college football has changed. It's much more of an NFL model now, in terms of records, in terms of the season and how it goes in the playoffs. So I think making sure that you talk about that. As you know, I put up games in our Sunday meeting as well, and when you talk about 3 of the top 5 teams in the country all having losses, I think that paints that picture as well. And then obviously the way last season, went. So I think all those things are important things to discuss and important things to make sure everybody is clear on. But I do think it needs to be addressed. I think it needs to be addressed with the players. I think it needs to be addressed with the coaches. Those are the things that I can control. So that's how we approached it.
Last question from Zoom, Neil Riddell.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
Just wondering, obviously after a huge game like that, a lot of opinions, and I know you're a routine guy, but you mentioned last week about how much recruiting you did during the open date, and I'm just wondering, is that a cause for reassessing that a little bit in front of such a huge opportunity of you spending more time, with the schematics, because it looked like it was a struggle on offense, especially early on. Just throwing it out there, wondering.
Yeah, I get it. It's like the scheduling question. I get it. When you lose a game, everything is going to be second guessed. I get it. We lost to a really good team. We had a chance to win. We showed tremendous resiliency. We were able to get on the scoreboard first, but I would not describe us as starting fast. So I get it. I get it. You lose a game, we're going to be second guessed. We stay in and don't go out recruiting and win that game, but then next year we're not in the position we need to be in recruiting and don't have the type of season that we should have next year or the years after. Then people say, well, you remember you didn't go out on that bye week. How come you normally go out on the bye week and you fell behind recruiting? So I get it. Anytime things don't go well, every decision is going to be critiqued. I get it. I totally get it. I understand the question. I understand where it's coming from. We try to anticipate some of these things, but yeah, I think we took the right approach. We spent a ton of time on Oregon. We spent a ton of time on Oregon this summer. I think they did as well. And then we balanced our week between recruiting and between preparing during the bye week for our next opponent. So I get the question. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I also understand where the question is coming from, and I understand after a loss, everything is going to get second guessed. I get it.
Good questions in the room. Over here on the right, Mark.
Thanks for your time, James.
You too.
Drew seems to take these losses very hard. Is that a fair assessment? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not judging. I'm asking, how do you kind of view that?
Yeah, I think we all do. I think when you put so much into something and you're so personally invested, it should hurt, right? As much as I'd like to say I love the winning as much as I hate the losing, that's not accurate. So I think Drew takes it very, very hard. I think there's a lot of similarities between the quarterback and the head coach because of the type of interactions you have, the interactions with the media, the fans. when things go well, the credit you get, and things don't go like, yeah, I think he takes it very personal, and I think it's why he's so driven and why he's so motivated. I also think, it's hard when you're a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid and you're walking off the field and you're already disappointed enough, and you're doing it in front of a fan base that is passionate and invested as well. So yeah, I think, I'd probably be more concerned if it was the opposite, if he didn't take it so hard. I think we're similar in a lot of ways. I feel personally responsible for the players. I feel personally responsible for the staff. I feel personally responsible for all of it. And I think our best players approach it the same way. And I think Drew's like that. So when things don't go well, I think he takes an approach like I take, and I think we all should. And I think Jim talked about this a ton on Sunday, and I know Andy did as well. But every single person in the locker room should start with themselves. I think it's human nature to point in another direction. And I think you have to be careful. We got families and friends that are trying to protect you, and they do the same thing. And if you're not careful, that's where your locker room can get divided. And obviously, we're not going to let that happen. So I think he takes it very personal, like what I have seen from really good players who are invested not only in this team but in this community, in this program, and everything.
Over here on the right, John.
Hey, James.
Hey, John.
Based on the first 4 games and how this offense has performed, do you feel like this identity has to be different than maybe what this team's identity, this offense identity has to be different than what you perceived it was going to be at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think that's a fair question because we've been inconsistent in how we've been trying to run it. I think that's a good question. I think that's a fair question. Those are the things I think we look at every single week. What do we need to do to be successful? What are we doing well? How can we build on those things? What are we not doing well? And how can we either fix those things or pivot in a different direction, to your point? And then I also think there's just a part of, when it comes to players holding themselves accountable and coaches coaching them to get it done. We all got to own a piece of that. But I think your point is a fair one. Just because this is how we did it last year doesn't mean that's how we have to do it this year. And that's part of leadership, and that's part of decisions that need to be made.
Audrey.
Hey, James.
Hey, Audrey.
Building off of John's question, what do you feel like your offense does best right now? What are maybe some of those things that have stuck out to you?
I think when we're running the ball, I think our play action pass is something that we have done well. I think when we can get Drew involved in the running game, I think that creates a lot of frustration for our for defenses. So a lot of the stuff that you saw on Saturday where we're able to run some of the read packages, option packages, however you want to look at it, with the speed sweep or quarterback power stuff, that's difficult to defend, right? Whether it's the zone read stuff and getting him out the backside of the run to keep the defense honest is something that we haven't seen a whole lot this year, which I think is valuable as well. And I think we've shown that Devontae Ross can make some plays. He's done it now in multiple games. I think Trevor Pena's done some really good things. And Hudson obviously has had some games as well. So we got to continue to distribute the ball around. The other guy is Katron Allen is playing really well. I think Nick, although the statistics would not say this, I think Nick is playing very consistent how he's played in the past. The difference with Nick is there's been usually 1 or 2 runs where there's been a space, there's been a gap, there's been a hole where he can rip off an explosive run. And he's been a guy that's been able to do that throughout his career with a 60-yard run, an 80-yard run, things like that. That obviously changed the perception and changed the statistics. So, I think, again, both questions I think are fair. But I think when we're able to run the ball, our play action pass has still been something that's been very, very good to us. We've been better in short yardage than I think we've been in the past, but we got to get to more short yardage situations, and we got to continue to distribute the ball around. Katron Allen obviously has had a really good early part of the season, and we got to build on that too.
On the right, Tyler.
Hey, Gene, appreciate
Tyler.
you talking with us today. Kind of look at my laptop for a moment because I want to get these statistics accurate. As a junior, Drew was at 60% pass completion, all 12 regular season games. He was 65 or better in 11 of those 12. Since then, he's under 60% in 7 of the last 8 games, including the last 3. This deep into his college career, and considering the continuity with his offensive coordinator and his quarterback's coach, how do you explain this trend, and can your team accomplish its primary goals if this trend sustains?
Yeah, no, the trend can't sustain, obviously. But again, I think we have to make sure that we're not in run, incomplete, or another run, and then obvious passing downs where we don't have clean pockets, we don't have open receivers. We gotta make sure that we're putting him in the best position as possible. There's some easier throws that we can find for him, whether it is quick game, whether it is screens, whether it is move the pocket, that we have to be able to do in these games to get him going like most quarterbacks. Obvious passing downs or significant shots down the field, 20 yards down the field, those things are going to impact completion percentage as well. So all those things factor in. But no, obviously you can't have bad statistics and expect that to lead to a positive result.
On the right, Daniel.
James, how are you today?
Good.
You talk about how hard you take losses and how hard Drew takes losses, but also the new landscape of college football and the way things are set up with the playoff. What has it been like for you to, I guess, recalibrate in terms of situations after a loss, and to get your players to maybe recalibrate to where one loss isn't necessarily the end anymore like it's been in the past?
Well, I think the things I've already answered in terms of going through that with our team and talking about how last year played out for other teams. Also looking at what's happened nationally with other ranked opponents, highly ranked opponents, or teams, excuse me. And then also, be able to kind of look at our season and what we have left. Again, I understand all the questions. I get it. I understand the frustration, but there's a ton of football left to be played. I think we're still ranked in the top 10. There's a ton of football and opportunities to be played to go do some special things. I think last year for us, as an example, we lost some games early on and we were able to get into the playoffs and make a run. And we were, a possession or a drive away for playing for the national championship last year after losses that were, resulted in a similar frustration and anger. So we got to bounce back, and we got to bounce back quickly. That's also why I moved the press conferences up to Monday, so that you guys can get your questions answered as soon as possible, and that it help us, myself and the team, move forward and move on as quickly as we possibly can.
Over here in the back, Max.
Good afternoon, James. When you talk about the defense maybe running out of gas toward the end, I wanted to highlight 3 positions. I think Zachy and King took every snap at safety, at linebacker, and then at defensive end. Nobody beyond the starters took more than 20 snaps. I guess, are you satisfied with how that rotation played out, and are you comfortable moving forward with the depth at those spots?
Again, I understand the question. I mean, do we want to be in a position where a guy plays 82 reps? No. But that's also why we played so many guys in the first 3 games, to create that depth and also to keep our starters fresh, knowing that we were going to take a different approach in this game. There's also a difference at the safety position. Me and Dex talk about this all the time. You make a mistake at the safety position, it's very different than a mistake at defensive line or a mistake at linebacker. Those mistakes go for touchdowns. So no, we got to create more depth. We got to be able to play more guys, but we went into this game knowing that we were going to play our starters as much as we possibly could to win the game. So yeah, I get it. The first 3 games, we could have played the starters more and probably played more consistent. Those were some of the questions. Then we get into this game and play the starters, at some positions, all, if not the majority of the reps, and then we run out of gas and that gets questioned. So I get it. I truly do. And we have to work to create more depth where Dex feels comfortable putting those guys on the field. I think that's going to be important at linebacker as well. At safety, I think we have some more options right now that we feel good about. Linebacker, we have to develop and create some of those. But again, I get the question.
In the back, Caleb.
Hey James,
Hey,
thanks for taking the time. Wanted to ask about the last offensive play there in double overtime. Kind of picking your brain of you and Andy. You have some time to obviously pick out that play knowing you're going into double overtime. Wondering the philosophy of running that play to the boundary versus the field.
Yeah, that play is, if you study that play of our time here, it's almost always run to the boundary, and probably could find some tweets and other things where you loved it. We've run that play to the boundary, a similar variation of that for probably the last 12 years. Most people run that play to the boundary. We've had a lot of success with it. They did a really good job of coaching it and covering it, especially when it complemented the run that we've been running all game. And like I mentioned earlier, I think you got to give them credit. You got to throw the ball away or take a check down or run to give us a chance to play another down. But yeah, that play is typically run into the boundary. Again, you got to give them credit. And again, I understand the question. A lot of times when you run plays into the boundary, whether it's the run game or whether it's the pass game, and they don't work, that always gets questioned, right? Because from a common sense approach, the field has more space. The issue with that is a lot of times when you can go FIB formation into the boundary or FSL formation to the sideline, however you say it, a lot of times defenses call field defenses, which actually creates more space, creates more angles, creates more leverage into the boundary. So that's why some run plays are called into the boundary, some pass plays are called into the boundary based on trying to take advantage of defenses playing field defense. And a lot of times you can gain leverage advantages, or you can actually, I know it seems strange, but space advantages into the boundary. So I hope I answered that question fairly, but that's why.
John.
James, you talked post-game Saturday about like the narrative around you and big games and all that stuff. What are the last 36 hours like for you from a personal standpoint, and how do you change how you personally handle that, from away from football stuff?
Yeah, we have lost to really good teams. We've lost to really, really good teams. And I take that very hard, and I take that very personal, because I know how important it is to so many different people. And I always start with myself and the things that I can control. That's why I take things so personal. That's why I take things so hard. And whenever you do that, you have to be careful. You try to tune out all the noise that you possibly can, again, which is difficult in today's day and age. And I try to insulate the players as much as I possibly can. Whether it's Greg Kincaid or Chris or other people will send me cut-ups or examples of how maybe other coaches and other people handle some of these questions. And I think that perspective is good. Some of the way those things are handled at other places, I don't think would go over very well here. If I got up in a press conference and said some things that I've seen other people say, I don't think that would go over very well. So I try to be as respectful as I can. I try to answer the tough questions that you guys give. It's not always easy to do. I wouldn't say I enjoy this whatsoever. But I also understand you guys got a job to do, and these tough questions are going to come. I will also say that I'm not going to allow one loss to define our season, and I'm not going to allow a few losses to define my career and what we have done here at Penn State. Because although I don't think a lot of people spend a ton of time on what we have done over our 12 years here, and I get it, nobody wants to hear this right now, there's a ton of positives. So I say this as someone that's trying to look at the positives here and move this program in the right direction and take the step that we need to take this week. So I want this to come off as me stating some positives to answer your question, and not just focus on the negatives, because I don't think that helps solve the problem. Screaming, yelling, pointing fingers, we're not going to do. And also there's a part of making sure that I represent this program, this university the right way, and do it with class and integrity, and that probably shows up more in times like this than other times, but it's not fun and it's not easy when you care as deeply as we care.
We got time for one more question in the back. T. Frank.
James, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Question, we've talked a lot about the offense, obviously. How quickly or how long do you think some of the changes you've suggested or you've discussed today could take to implement, in terms of, is it a thing that next week on the field it could look totally different, or are these some of the things that you're talking about, some of the ideas we've talked about? What is the timeline of when you think of a turnaround for the offense in that regard?
Yeah, sorry, I'm smirking because whatever I say, then next week we walk in here and then that's the next question, right? Oh yeah, we're going to get this turned around now, and then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. Or if I say the opposite, they're like, well,
Could I rephrase it then? Because I understand totally from that perspective.
I'll still answer your question, but yeah, you can rephrase it if you want to, but I'm going to answer your question either way. I'm not just going to say that and move on.
No, I understand, the time element of that being, problematic in terms of getting to what the answer, you might want to actually give is. So how challenging is it to make changes, either schematically or personnel-wise, in the middle of the season to affect the positive changes you want?
Yes, sir. And I'm not saying you were asking that question trying to put me in that position, but that's what it would have been, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reality is, I think things can change quickly, right? There's the opportunity for that aha moment when things just start to roll. A guy makes a big play, and then the confidence and that momentum just takes over, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a grind, and you're gonna grind this thing out and find ways to get ugly wins. It's interesting, because as you know, we're close to the Eagles and we're close to Saquon, and one of the things that got sent to me today, not that I get to follow it as closely as I would like, but I guess their running game has been struggling and Saquon's numbers haven't been as big, and people are asking why and this, and I think the answer from the offensive lineman that I saw with the accent, he's a massive human being with a beautiful accent. I don't want to mispronounce his last name. How do you say it?
Mailata.
Thank you. And what he said was, it's like he has a block one play that he wish he could have back, and then the next play it's another guy or the tight end or a misread. You're close. And the fortunate thing for the Eagles is they've been able to do that and do that through winning, right? And for us, we've been able to win up to last weekend. So then all these things become magnified. And now we're sitting here answering these questions, and these questions and these answers become more impactful. So to answer your question is back to what I said. I think we could make a few plays, we could get a couple big runs, and the light go on, and the energy's good, and the momentum's good, and we start to roll. Or we could grind through it. But the reality is we're going to do whatever we have to do to win games, and it may be pretty, and I may be in here next week and answering questions, and it was a thing of beauty that got a win, or it could be painful and ugly, but if it gets a win, that's what we're going to do. And we got to find a way, like I was just talking about the Eagles, is as we're getting better, we're finding ways to win games, and the opposite. That at the end of the day, we're going to, not the opposite, but we're going to find ways to win games, and whether we're explosive and pretty doing it or ugly doing it, at the end of the day, we got to find ways to win games and get better while we're doing it, is what I'm going to say.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.